Well, the viewers of this show are absolutely the best. Take a look at this. This is the first time I get to use this mug on the first sip. Welcome to the first sip. Somebody sent me a mug that says, I don't give a sip. That is glorious. Let's go. There are political scandals that erupt in real time, and then there are the slow burning ones. The ones the government praise will fade from memory. The ones the media quietly lets slip into the background. The ones that only explode months later when the truth is finally forced into the open. And that is exactly what has just happened with Mark Carney's big housing announcement from back in mid-September. You probably remember the images. You probably remember the headlines from it. You probably remember people tweeting and posting on Instagram about the houses suddenly disappearing. You probably remember the cameras panning across what looked like an active construction site. Rows of modern modular units we thought were being built for this project. Behind the Prime Minister, soil moved, ground prepared, equipment staged, and a triumphant Carney declaring that this was the beginning of a new era in housing delivery, but it was all a sham. And now the Privy Office has admitted it. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
In 2 days assembled on site in one. We kept the townhouses. We wanted to keep the townhouses open. We held back the workers from finishing it so you could see how things fit together, how the computer design fits together and tailors the structure.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the first sip. I'm Chris Baker. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course comment. The I Don't Give a Sip mug is not only glorious because it has to do with this show, and that was a pretty cool little gift to receive, but also the fact that that's kind of what Mark Carney has been saying about everything that's going on in Canada. Who cares? I don't give a sip. Anyway, now we know because the Privy Council Office has finally been forced to answer an order paper question that what Canadians thought they were seeing that day was not a construction site at all. It was not the beginning of a neighborhood. It was not proof that homes were being built. It was not evidence that the crisis was finally being addressed, and it was a staged set. Now, we knew this because Conservative MPs were posting this already in photos, but it was a temporary arrangement of unfinished structures that were erected purely for show, dismantled almost immediately after the press conference, and billed directly to the taxpayers of Canada. More than $32,000 spent not on housing, not on materials, not on infrastructure, and not on delivery, but on political theater, on one single 20-minute press conference. And here is where this becomes so much worse than people actually realized at the time when this was first exposed. Because the scandal isn't just the display that was fake, it's that the truth only surfaced just now, months later, because the government had hoped nobody would ask the question. They had never addressed the tweets or the Instagram posts. They had hoped nobody would demand documentation around it. They had hoped nobody would force them to explain. They had hoped the news cycle would move on and Canadians would never find out that they were lied to. But since we get lied to on the daily now, we're always finding out. It's the cover-up, the concealment. That's the story. Because if Conservative MP Arnold Viersen hadn't demanded answers, the Privy Council would never have volunteered this information to any of us. They were caught, and they only admitted the truth when there was no longer any way to avoid the truth. So this is not a misunderstanding, Canada. This is not sloppy messaging. This is not a communications oversight. This is a deliberate effort to pull the wool over your eyes, to make Canadians believe something was happening that was not actually happening. And this is the dramatic dishonesty that Mark Carney and the Liberals continue to show. Mark Carney stood in front of those stage structures knowing they would be removed shortly after and spoke as though they represented tangible progress. He actually said it. He implied urgency. He implied efficiency. He implied movement and momentum and breakthrough. He even said that the workers had been held back from finishing the units. That was a lie. He knew they were being taken away. Held back from finishing the units so Canadians could see they fit together, as if the project was active, ongoing, and had to be stopped. Meanwhile, the site was never started in the first place. It was just a gravel lot with no utilities, no foundations, no street grid, no development plan, no housing permits, and no intention of continuing construction once the cameras stopped rolling. A huge, bold-faced lie right to your faces. And then within days, the houses disappeared. Bulldozers flattened the gravel again. The site returned to what it really was, which is an empty piece of federally owned land being used as a temporary political stage. And the media, instead of demanding accountability for all of this, shrugged it off and moved on because it's Mark Carney speaking and he's our glorious savior. They reported the announcement, but not the deception. They showed the backdrop, but not the removal of the properties. They amplified the illusion for Mark, but ignored the revelation afterwards. This is the part Canadians need to sit with now. Because when a government knows the media won't hold them accountable, they become even bolder in their dishonesty and their lies, and that was super bold. But he knew he wouldn't get called out on it. And this government, under Mark Carney, has learned that lesson very, very well. This is not the first time that we've seen staged governance from the Liberal machine. We have seen staged announcements from about foreign investment that never materialized. We have seen staged job creation numbers that evaporated under scrutiny. We saw it during the election campaign when he was standing in front of fake steel workers. We have seen staged climate targets that were missed every single year. We have seen staged trade breakthroughs that collapse behind closed doors. We have seen staged agreements with foreign leaders that were nothing more than the memorandums of understanding with no enforceability. We have seen staged after staged after stage. We have even seen staged immigration planning that ignored capacity, housing, availability, and infrastructure limits in this country. We have seen staged budget claims that the parliamentary budget officer later exposed as misclassified, misrepresented, I should say, or outright fictional. How can this all be happening and nobody's saying anything about it? Over and over again, the pattern is the same. The announcement comes first, the optics come first, the photo op comes first, the headline comes first, the visuals come first. The truth, if it ever comes out at all, comes very last. This is not competence. This is a governing strategy. This is becoming old hat and habit for them in conjunction with the mainstream legacy media. Mark Carney governs by illusion and he uses the media to help him do it. He governs by imagery. He governs by constructing belief rather than constructing actual outcomes. Think about this. 90% of liberals just believe he's going to change this country, but he actually hasn't done any of that yet, and nor does he plan to. And the housing stunt proves it more clearly than anything that has come before, because housing is the crisis that Canadians are feeling the most. Housing is where people cannot be fooled forever. Housing is where the promise of action must eventually translate into something physical. A key, a lease, a closing date, a mortgage renewal that doesn't destroy a family's monthly budget and finances. Housing cannot be faked, but Mark Carney tried to fake it anyway. And he almost got away with it. If this wasn't asked for, we wouldn't have seen it. Now, we knew it anyway because it was exposed in social media posts, but it's now proven by the Privy Office. Think about that. The homes behind him were never part of a real development. That is a lie. The site was never meant to continue. So the fact that he said they stopped the building was a lie. The display was assembled purely for the cameras, and he knew it. The government admitted none of this at the announcement, none of it whatsoever. They only acknowledged it when forced to by a parliamentary demand months later. And even then, they tried to soften it, calling it a demonstration, calling it an example of what could be done. That's not what you said in the press conference, not at all. You called it an illustration of potential. Again, not said at the press conference. But Canadians were not shown possibility that day. They were shown performance, and he tried to claim it. He said they had to stop the builders from finishing it. Even the taxpayer watchdog, the Canadian Taxpayers Association, or Federation, I should say, said what everyone else now realizes. Mark Carney made the public pay for a very expensive political commercial, a $30,000 prop set, so he could look like a builder, so he could look like progress was being made, so he could look like someone taking action, so he could look like someone delivering on his promises, so he could look like the leader he wants people to believe he is, even though he has not earned that belief 1 ounce so far. And here is the broader danger. Mr. Who Cares and his government is willing to fake housing momentum. It will fake anything if it's willing to do that. If it is willing to stage a neighborhood, it will stage a policy result. If it is willing to conceal the truth about construction, it will conceal the truth about deficits, debt, trade, taxes, affordability, crime, immigration, defense, and defense spending in particular, healthcare, outcomes, education standards, energy capacity, infrastructure funding. Should I go on? Because a government that relies on illusion eventually becomes incapable of telling the truth. They become incapable of even doing anything real. This housing stunt is not just a scandal. It is a diagnosis of a real health problem here in Canada. It tells us this government has no solutions. It tells us this government has no credibility. They blew it out of the water by lying, specifically saying they stopped construction on this just for the press conference. This government has no intention of changing course. This government believes Canadians can be manipulated with set decoration and their legacy media. And so here is the call out, not to Mark Carney, because he's not going to change, not to the Liberal Party, because they benefit from all of this, and they benefit from the illusion especially, not to the media, because they lack the courage and the accountability any longer to confront lies. The call out is to Canadians. It's the call outs to each and every one of us. Because really the only reason staged governance works is because we believe it. The only reason staged governance works is because people allow it to. The only reason illusions succeed is because nobody demands reality. The only reason the government has the ability to fake anything at all, but in particular to fake progress, is because too many citizens have stopped even expecting progress. The promise is fine. The promise is the progress in a lot of Liberals' eyes. So here is the question every Canadian must truly, deeply ask themselves. Are you willing to keep living in a country where the government builds props instead of actual homes? Are you willing to keep accepting announcements instead of actual shown, visible, and on-paper results? Are you willing to let the people in power use your money you send them every year to lie to your face? Because if Canadians do not demand better here, this will not be the last fake construction site. It will not be the last staged miracle of Mark Carney's. It will not be the last Potemkin policy. But if Canadians stand up and we actually start speaking out, and you share things like this video and other creators' videos that are calling all of this stuff out, and refuse to be fooled anymore, then this scandal won't just expose a cover-up. It will mark the beginning of a trend to the end. It will mark the beginning of the end of political theater masquerading as leadership and completed projects. Because the truth is now out. This has been proven now by the Privy Council. The question now is whether Canadians are finally ready to act on the truth. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things, The First Sip. Don't forget, we'll be back this afternoon at 2:45 for the last word. Appreciate you being here. Try to give a sip today, and we will see you this afternoon. Have a good one, guys.